Elias had made a pact with himself that this Saturday would be entirely unremarkable. The itinerary was strict and solitary: a drive down to the Riverside Art Fair, a quick search for a specific type of charcoal sketchpad, perhaps a black coffee, and then back to his apartment before the weekend crowds descended. In the 2 years since the separation, Elias had engineered his life to be streamlined, quiet, predictable. He told himself that he preferred the silence.
It was safer that way.
Hold on just a moment before we continue. If this story is touching something in you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference and helps me bring you more stories like this one. I also want to hear from you. Write in the comments. Where are you right now? Are you tucked away in a peaceful village where stars fill the sky, or surrounded by the hum and glow of a city that never sleeps? But the moment he stepped onto the damp cobblestones of the Riverwalk, the air felt different, charged, somehow, heavier than the morning mist suggested. The smell of rain, oil paint, and roasted chestnuts hung thick in the air. He was weaving through a crowd near a photography exhibit, trying to keep his thoughts neutral, when a sudden flash of movement froze him in his tracks. It wasn't a voice. It was a gesture. A specific, delicate way of tilting the head while examining an object. He hadn't seen that mannerism in 2 years. It was the same way she used to inspect the garden roses on Sunday afternoons. Elias stopped, his sneakers gripping the wet pavement. His heart hammered a sudden, uneven rhythm against his ribs. The world seemed to shrink until it was just him and the woman standing 10 feet away. Clara, his ex-wife's mother. Logic said this was impossible. He hadn't spoken to her since the lawyers finished their work. 2 years of absolute radio silence. 2 years of convincing himself that the shared history, the holidays, and the bond had all dissolved into a numb acceptance. But seeing her there, standing by a stall filled with hand-thrown pottery, the numbness evaporated instantly. She was holding a blue ceramic vase, tracing the rim with a gloved finger. Gloves he recognized. The morning light caught the silver in her hair, making it shine like spun moonlight. Then she turned. Her gaze found his. For a heartbeat, the noise of the fair, the street musicians, the laughter, the wind off the river, vanished. All that was left was the memory of her kitchen table, the smell of baking bread, and the easy conversations that had once anchored him. Clara's expression shifted rapidly. Surprise, hesitation, and then a slow, dawning warmth. "Elias," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise with a familiarity that made his chest ache. It was gentle, steady, carrying a resonance he hadn't realized he was starving for. I certainly didn't expect to run into you here." She had always been a woman of grace. Careful with her words. Protective. It was the reason he had trusted her, even when his marriage to her daughter was falling apart. "I just came for the walk," Elias lied. He rarely came to this part of town. He usually avoided anything that held the ghost of a memory. But standing in front of Clara, he felt like he had stepped through a doorway into the past, a version of reality where they were still family, where the awkwardness was just a momentary pause, not a permanent state. A silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said for 24 months. Elias noticed the small things, the coat she wore, the dignity in her stance, the faint scent of jasmine tea that always seemed to follow her. "You look steady," Clara said finally. It wasn't small talk. It was an assessment, kind but sharp. "Life has been treating you well, I hope?" Elias nodded, feeling the tension in his shoulders drop an inch. "I'm getting by. You look wonderful, Clara." He knew the protocol was to smile, nod, and keep moving, to keep his carefully constructed walls intact. But he couldn't move. "I was actually heading toward the watercolor stands near the pier," Clara said, a slight tremor of uncertainty in her tone. "Would you care to walk with me?" The invitation was tentative, fragile. Elias knew he should say no. He should protect his peace. But his legs were already turning to fall in step beside her. "I'd like that," he said softly. They walked together past rows of canvas and sculpture. It felt dreamlike. The history between them added weight to every step, yet the rhythm was effortless. Elias watched her pause to admire a landscape painting, her eyes crinkling at the corners. He remembered how much she loved art. He remembered how she used to teach him what to look for. "You always did have an eye for the melancholy pieces," Elias said, breaking the quiet. Clara laughed, a sound that brightened the gray morning. "I suppose I do. There's a certain beauty in the quiet things, isn't there?" They spoke about the art, the river, the changing skyline. Safe topics. But beneath the surface, a deeper dialogue was taking place. A conversation about endurance, about moving forward. "You've changed, Elias," Clara observed as they stopped to watch a ferry cross the water. Elias leaned against the railing. "I suppose. It's been a quiet few years." "It has," she agreed, looking out at the water. "We've all had to find new ways to navigate the fog." "Yeah," Elias said. "Some days are clearer than others." She turned to him then, her expression softening. "And sometimes, the fog lifts to reveal things we thought were gone for good." A chill went through Elias, but it wasn't from the cold. He realized this wasn't just a random meeting. It was a test, a possibility. "Let's sit for a moment," Clara suggested, pointing to a bench facing the river. They sat, the wooden slats damp and cool. The crowd flowed behind them, irrelevant. "You were good to her, Elias," Clara said suddenly. She didn't use her daughter's name. She didn't need to. Elias looked down at his hands. "I tried my best. It just wasn't the right fit in the end." "Marriages end," Clara said gently. "That doesn't mean the love was wasted. And it doesn't mean the people who cared about you stopped caring the moment the papers were signed." Her words were like a balm on an old wound. He had missed this. He had missed her perspective. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost a matriarch, a guide. "I missed you, Clara," Elias admitted, his voice rough. "I didn't realize how much until seeing you today." Clara's eyes grew misty. She reached over and patted his arm, a motherly, familiar weight. "I missed you too, Elias. The Sunday dinners were awfully quiet without your stories." They sat in companionable silence as the morning turned to afternoon. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who understood the complexity of loss. Finally, Clara stood up, adjusting her scarf. "I should get going. I've kept you long enough." "No," Elias said, standing with her. "You really didn't." They walked back toward the entrance. The tension was gone, replaced by a strange, hopeful clarity. "I'm glad we found each other today," Clara said, unlocking her car door. "Me too." Elias watched her get in. He stood there, feeling the shifting tectonic plates of his life. He turned to walk to his own truck, his mind racing. He had thought that chapter was closed forever. But Clara had just shown him that the book was bigger than he thought. He was reaching for his keys when he heard the rapid click of heels on pavement behind him. He turned. Clara was hurrying back, holding a small paper bag from a bakery stall. "I forgot," she said, slightly breathless, her eyes bright. "I bought these ginger snaps. The spicy ones you used to raid my pantry for." She held out the bag. Elias took it, a lump forming in his throat. "And," she added, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I wanted to say, I hope you aren't too lonely, Elias." Elias looked at the bag, then at her honest, aging face. "I am," he said. The admission hung in the air, raw and true. "I am sometimes." Clara nodded slowly.
"So am I."
"But we don't have to be strangers." "No," Elias said. "We don't." "Coffee next Saturday?" she asked. It wasn't just a coffee date. It was a bridge. "Next Saturday," Elias promised. She smiled, a smile that reached her eyes, and turned back to her car. Elias sat in his truck for a long time before turning the ignition. The bag of ginger snaps sat on the dashboard. The sharp, sweet smell of ginger filled the cab. He drove home through the city, the afternoon sun finally breaking through the clouds. He thought about his plan for a manageable life. He had wanted safety. He had wanted walls. But as he merged onto the freeway, he realized that walls also block out the light. Life had just blindsided him in the best way possible. People leave imprints on our souls, marks that legal documents can't erase. He had thought his connection to that family was dead, but the roots were still there, waiting for rain. Elias reached for a ginger snap and took a bite. It tasted exactly like the past, but sweet. He knew, with a calm, settling certainty, that this wasn't just a hello. It was a beginning. The past hadn't come back to hurt him. It had come back to remind him who he was. The road ahead was unmapped. It was complicated. But for the first time in years, Elias wasn't just existing. He was moving toward something real. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in golds and violets, Elias smiled. The ordinary Saturday was gone. Something extraordinary had taken its place.